segment of From Seed to Harvest workshop number 5. I'm your host, Sister Rhonda Muhammad, and I will be hosting the taking everyone on a journey as we meet our guest and we hear what they have to say. On this month on food preservation, freeze dried, vacuuming, the food dehydration, and canning. Now, for the benefit of those that are new to the show, this idea came from my own personal failures, challenges during the COVID-19, wanting and desire to grow my own food, but the challenges had overcome me. So I would like to I took this opportunity to find a way to share with a group, from a group of knowledge-based persons that work in these areas to help our community. And because of COVID-19 has disproportionately affected our community, our food, what we eat, is very key and important to sustain our lives. So with that said, let's recap. Last month we talked about doing your own, how to do your own community garden, start your own, or how to get involved with one. This month, as I just said, would be food dehydration, freeze-dried canning, and vacuum sealing. And I have an amazing guest I'd like to introduce you to. So so happy to have them on the show. So let me begin by introducing the guest, starting with Sister Vicky. Welcome, Sister Vicky, to the show. I'm going to tell you her bio, a little bit about her. Sister Vicky was introduced to gardening at a very young age through her grandmother. For many years, she had no interest in gardening due to apartment living. In 2016, Sister Vicky was introduced to container gardening and began to grow fruits and vegetables on her patio. This led to her canning a lot of what she grew. She soon ran out of space and had to come up with another way to preserving her food. Thus leads to her attending a preparedness conference many years ago, and the main focus of the conference was to store as much food as possible by dehydrating and vacuum sealing it. So she began storing food using dehydration and vacuum sealing to save space and for easy transport. Welcome, Sister Vicky, and thank you for joining us on the show today. Okay, next, we have Brother Gerald. Welcome back, Brother Gerald. He's been on our show before. Welcome back, and thank you for accepting the invitation to this month's show. I'm going to give you a little of Brother Gerald's bio, especially for the newcomers. Brother Gerald was born in Chicago, Illinois, and raised in Mississippi. He joined the U.S. Army working in the field as a laboratory technician. He has Associates of Applied Science degree in Chemical Technology from Mary Holmes Junior College, West Point, Mississippi. He later obtained associate's degree in both electrical and electronics technology from Hines Community College, Utah, Mississippi, where he currently works as an electronics engineer technical instructor. In 2011, he completed the Will Allen's Growing Power Training course in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a fantastic course. I hear so much great, he produced many great people from that course. He was also instrumental in establishing and managing several community gardens in and around the city of Vicksburg. He presently serves as the coordinator in the Ministry of Agriculture under the leadership of Dr. Ridgely A. Moomin. He and his wife are owners of Silk Rose Cottage Food Industries, which specializes in the production of Silk Rose freeze-dried navy bean soup. Welcome again, Brother Gerald. Thank you for being here. And lastly, Sister Portia, she's working on some technical things to get her things started and moving forward, but I'm going to introduce her to you all. Sister Portia Bellamy, she graduated from Winston-Salem State University with a Bachelor's of Science in Molecular Biology. Wow. Taught middle school science for 10 years, have been doing urban gardening for over 6 years, started Grow Flow in January 2020 to educate and empower others to learn how to grow food for themselves and their families. Welcome, Sister Portia. I know you hear me. She's working on her technical things, but we're going to move along the show, and she'll be with us shortly. Okay, now before I go into the show, I always start with a posing question, because what we do when you do something is a reason, a purpose for it. So this month's posing question is this, and any of the panelists can answer the question: why preserve our foods? Why shouldn't we just go to our local store and grab some cans and store it in our house and do some I've seen freeze-dried foods or fresh fruits and things. Why not do that? Why waste your time doing the canning, dehydration, vacuum sealing, um, and, um, and doing taking that route, instead of just going to the store and stocking up? And even more so, why now than any other time in the past? Any of the businesses can address the question or questions.
I will. I'll go. I'll
Okay.
respond to that. Um, the reason that we should do our own is because we'll know the quality of it. We'll know what's in it. There will be nothing hidden. And then you can make the selection on what you want to store in your house. It's a lot easier when you do it instead of buying it already prepared, because you don't know the quality of it. You really don't know what's in it
Right.
for it to be preserved. So it's better to do a DIY, do it yourself.
Right. Thank you. Very good. Very good point. Thank you, Sister Vicky. Excellent point.
And if I could add to that,
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
the also the the agency that supervises or oversees the products and the preservatives and the things that are added into the food are, it's like they're on the tape, and
Mhm.
they're not really uh, enforcing the science behind a lot of the decisions that are being made. So there's conflicts with the scientists who are saying you shouldn't put this component in the food, but the Food and Drug Administration will sometimes they'll just allow those things to take place. Uh, Also, when you're doing it yourself, like Sister Vicky said, important point, you know what you get. You know what you get, and you can stay away from those pesticides and the different chemicals that they be adding to the foods, and especially in today's world, how business is running things. And food, we grow food, for nutritional value and to sustain ourselves, but uh, the capitalists have taken over and they growing food to get money. And so your health is compromised just to get that dollar. So it's real important, especially today, to do that. Do it yourself. What is it? DIY, Sister Vicky.
Yes,
Do
sir.
it,
DIY.
do it yourself.
Beautiful. Thank you. Very good points. I'd like to add to it the food shortage. If we could pay
Oh
attention, it's on the
yeah,
show. Yes, what's going on in the stores? If you
Yes.
pay close attention, you go to the store, why the shelves are so empty? What's happening to the foods on the shelf?
yeah,
We have a lot of natural disasters are happening, and now the crops were interfered with the weathers that we experienced recently, rain and
right.
so
Cannot
forth,
hear
and different
them.
weather patterns that cause the killing of crops.
Where?
On the corner of the microphone. There you go.
I
And
don't have it on mute.
okay,
He's
all
working.
right, okay, we're gonna continue. Okay, so food shortage is on the rise,
Yes.
and if we are to sustain ourselves, we need nutritionist food. There's no way to telling. You see the labels that say a lot of minerals and vitamins in it, but that's not what's really happening. What you see, that's in process and
Oh,
process
don't.
and process, and you don't know how long it's sitting on the shelf.
Mhm.
And that food is
Okay,
really
I got it.
dangerous. A
Thank you.
lot of the canned food, because the salt content, the preservative content, it will kill you after a while. Your body's not. Our body is energy. The food is energy for our bodies, and you're not getting any type of energy or satisfaction for the health welfare of yourself and your family. So it's best to know non-GMO seeds. You have to know that, knowing what's how things are grown. You have a charge of that. You have a whole charge of your whole family and yourselves. So it's best to do it yourself. and get the best of foods at farmers markets and so forth. Good farmers in your community, but we need to get started because while it's day, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, but we want to make sure we have enough of different varieties of things in our house so that we can supplies that we can feed ourselves and our family. So that was awesome. Thank you for adding to that. And Sister Portia will be on real soon, but we're going to move forward anyway. We have enough time for her to get situated to get on for us. So we're going to go straight into first speaking with Sister Vicky. She's going to present to us on food dehydration and vacuum sealing, giving us a wealth of information on that her knowledge base from her personal experience and what she's done. We're going to share it on the show. Okay, it's all yours, Sister Vicky.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to give everyone the greetings of Assalamu Alaikum, and I would like to thank Sister Rhonda for asking me if I would do this, and it's a pleasure. So let me pull up my presentation, and we can go from there. So give me a moment. Let me pull it up. Okay, my presentation is the dehydration and vacuum seal, the pros and cons, because I've had a lot of people to ask me, why don't you just go and buy frozen vegetables out of the store? And my experience is you really don't know how long it's been frozen. You buy it and it's has freezer burn on it. So I just want to go over a few points. Um, Dehydration is not, I want to go over a brief history. Dehydration is not it's nothing new. I mean, it's been done for thousands of years. The Egyptians did it by drying fruit and vegetables in the desert. The Vikings did it by drying fish aboard their ships. And the Chinese, and matter of fact, the Chinese still do it. But back in the day, they did dry fruits and vegetables and healing herbs in the summer months. And all of us here in America know about the American Indians, how they dried fish. The ones on the coast dried fish with the sea salt, and the ones inland dried their fish over the heat of an open flame. Okay, some of the pros and cons of dehydration. The pros are it saves money, it saves on storage space. You can also dehydrate meats, fish, and vegetables and fruits. It's easy to transport. The technique is very simple. The cons are the time preparation. It takes a while to prep for the canning. For the dehydration, and then the time that it takes to dehydrate. So sometimes it takes, depending on what you're dehydrating, it may take up to 15 hours to dehydrate. Okay, so the dehydrators actually range from inexpensive to very expensive. And I've just kind of posted here the least expensive that I found was Hampton Beach food dehydrator, and it was like 50 some odd dollars. Now I did look on Amazon, and this is where I kind of got my pricing from, was from Amazon. But you can just kind of see the difference. And the most expensive one that I found was the Excalibur 3926 TB. That was the most expensive one that I found on Amazon. And just to let you know that the most expensive one has been sold out. So they don't really have any more of these, not until the first of the year. So you can just kind of see the difference between the two. Okay, so for the vacuum sealing, this is the most, Food Saver is the most commonly one used. You have other brands, but I found that this brand right here is the most reliable because it will use any vacuum seal bags that are on the market. These are the two that I mainly use. I use the bags, and then you have a roll So you can determine what you want to put in a bag, or something may be really small or really large, but you can determine that by using the roll. All right, and these are some items that I have done. This is my survival backpack, and I have about, well, depending on how I disperse it, I have up to 9 months of food here in this backpack. And the reason that I do the canning, the mason jar canning, but if I have to leave, because I do live in an apartment, if I have to leave my food here, at least I'll have some that I can take with me. And so these are just some of the things that I have. I do it exactly the way as far as labeling. So I'll know what it is and the date that I did seal it. My seals, as you can see, the one that I have on here, it comes from 2000. I got one from 2018. So I have some older than that, and I try to rotate them as much as possible. But as you note here, I said that if I ate one meal a day, the food in this backpack would last me 3 months. If I ate one meal every 2 days, it would last me 6 months. And if I ate one meal every 3 days, it would last me up to 9 months. So that's something to consider when you are canning, or when you're preserving food, or when you're dehydrating and freeze dry, to try to put away as much food as you think that you and your family would need. So I'd like to thank you for listening to my presentation, and thank you, Sister Rhonda.
I said thank you so very much, Sister Vicky.
Oh, you're
Very
welcome.
much. Now,
Welcome.
could you tell us a little more about the process? My challenge is I have this box in my house. It's a food dehydrator.
Okay.
And I looked at it so intimidating because I have all these layers of rolls. I opened the box and I closed the box. So it's been sitting here for a few months. So, I mean, the words on the instructions are too wordy and so
Mhm.
small. So, oh,
Well, depending on the dehydrator and how many shelves you have,
mhm,
I have a dehydrator. Mine has 9 shelves, and mine is kind of in the mid-range. Mine is from Millhouse.
mhm.
And it should have a cookbook that comes with it to tell you the
Okay,
amount of time that you should dehydrate something. Like, you don't ever dehydrate onions and garlic with your fruits and vegetables, not unless you want them to have the aroma or the taste of the garlic and the onions, because it's
right,
very strong. So you try to dehydrate things that are of like nature, like all fruits, vegetables. I use a slicer, so I'll have a uniform slicing of each fruit or vegetable to make sure that it's uniform,
hmm,
and they all dry at the same time. The longest that I've ever dried a fruit was about 36 hours, and that was because it was like grapes, like raisins, something that has a lot of moisture in it.
hmm,
It'll take a while for it to dehydrate. And like I said, that's one of the things that people don't like, is that it takes a while for it to process, for
right.
the dehydration process.
Okay,
But
thank
there
you.
are a lot of good dehydration recipe books online.
Hmm.
There are some for beginners, some for experts, because I know quite a few people that I met at the preparedness conference. They do a lot of jerky. So, with different flavors, and a couple of people have even went into business doing the different type of
Right.
jerkies. So,
Hmm.
yes, ma'am.
So tell us also, thank you so much for that. Tell us also, why would you have what would be called gold bags? And for those that may not know, and why would you put a bunch of food in your bag?
Well, because I live in an apartment, and you never ever know the circumstances that you may have to vacate the premises. It may be a fire, a water leak, even you have neighbors that may be doing things that they shouldn't do. But if you have to leave the property, I learned from experience when I moved from a house to an apartment that the movers destroyed a lot of my canned goods that I had stored in my mason jars.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just really upset because it took a lot of time for me to process that.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to think about, okay, what happens if I have to move again and the movers destroy, my canned goods? So my to-go bag is to leave in case of an emergency. I have one in my car and I have one here at the
Beautiful.
apartment.
Beautiful. And my last question to you is, what's the difference between the one that's $50? Doesn't matter, I get the $50 one or get the 300 or 250 one, food dehydrator?
Yes, I would look at how often you plan to dehydrate. You have a better warranty on the more expensive ones on
Mm-hmm.
parts,
Mm-hmm.
and the more expensive ones will last longer during the duration of you dehydrating. So it just depends on how often you plan to do that.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you so very much. I'm gonna leave the rest
Yes,
of the
ma'am.
questions for the audience to send in. Now, I forgot to mention, send your questions in the chat while the presenters are presenting. There will be a segment after the presentation for your questions to be addressed or answered. You can send to a particular person that you like to, or just to the panel, and put a shout out in wherever you're from, so we can shout you out at the end and let you know that your city or state supported this program today. Following after the presentations, we'll be celebrating the Black-owned businesses by showing what their businesses are. That's our commercial break. After commercial break, we'll have Sister Kadira to come on and address any of your questions. So don't forget to put your questions in the chat. All right. So thank you. So let's continue. That was housekeeping. Let's continue on that. Thank you so much, Sister Vicky, for the
You're
information.
welcome.
I feel good about the fact that go bag, because I've always tried to put so much stuff in that bag and it's just not enough room. But vacuum sealing answers my question and gave me a solution. Thank you so much. Very
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you very much, Sister Vicky. Okay, let's go. Brother Gerald, you're up. Brother Gerald's going to talk to us about freeze-dried foods. And I definitely like to hear that, what you have to say about that. So, Brother Gerald, the floor is yours.
I'd like to open up in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, and I want to give you all the greetings of Assalamu Alaikum, and and I want to thank you, Sister Rhonda, for what you're doing, and I wish you much success. We got to make a nation of farmers and food scientists,
Mm-hmm.
and the panel, Sister Vicky, that was a beautiful presentation.
Yes.
I, I'm going to talk a little bit about freeze drying. Okay, let me get this set up here. I think we'll go right here, and then we'll do this here. And now the freeze drying. Let me give you of the a little bit of the history of that freeze drying. Now, this right here, what you see here is a product. This is a garlic that was locally grown, and we took it, freeze dried it, converted it into a powder, and and it has. I can keep that powdered garlic for 25 years, and it will still maintain 98% of its nutritional value. You're supposed to say, "Wow." Okay, but think about that. I can keep that garlic for 25 years without refrigeration, and it will still maintain its nutritional value. 98%. Now, the way freeze drying came about was during the war. I think it was World War II. They needed to ship blood and plasma to the soldiers overseas, and they needed it to be able to make the trip and still have some to still be somewhat pure and not degrade. And that was and they came up with this method of freeze drying. Also, in the world of pharmaceuticals, is freeze drying is really, really, really big in that if you want to maintain and preserve like cultures and medication, you wanted to keep it shelf stable. Now, the process of freeze drying is to take a sample. Let me see. I'm gonna stop my share and bag out. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Does anybody know what this is? This is a turmeric. Okay. My wife grows it out in the back, and this is turmeric. Now, if I was going to send it to you, Sister Rhonda, Sister Vicky, Sister Portia, how are you? If I was going to send this to you, and I wanted to get it to you, I would have to probably put it in the mail, the time it starts to degrade and all that. But if I took this and I freeze dried it, and and locked it in one of those mylar containers, and I could send it to you, no refrigeration, none of that, and it would still maintain 98% of its nutritional value. Now, the process is that you take your sample, you take your product, and your product is frozen to a low temperature, keeping the nutrients in. It's frozen, and what happens is the water, the moisture in the food will turn to ice, and the process is called the process of sublimation, where you're going to take now. I'm going to take it when it's frozen, and I'm going to control the pressure and the temperature, and I'm going to cause that water that's in the food to sublimate, to go from a solid ice into a gas, and it's removed out, into a vapor, and it's removed out. The only thing that really makes food spoil is really water. Water, and I would say water mostly will make food spoil. So that process of putting it in that condition, freezing it, and then drying it to get that water out of your product, and then sealing it. Yeah, water and air. You've got to protect it from the air. Those are the things that causes food to spoil. Okay, so if we're able to do that, then we can you can make it shelf stable. Okay, this is one of the products that we do. Also, we do a oregano. We take it, grow it here, and from there we'll go ahead and freeze dry it and turn it into a powder. We also do cayenne, and this is cayenne pepper, and I want to say it once again that this right here will last 25 years, still maintaining 98% of its nutritional value. And we know where we get it because we grew it. You know, we know what put in it, we know the type of soil, we know all of that because this is what we've done. And here, want to go to here. Now this right here is this is broccoli sprouts, and this is one of those nutraceuticals that has a high content of sulforaphane, and it's a anti-aging, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory ingredient that they call it a superfood. And let's see here. That's broccoli sprouts, and I think that might be sage, and then we've got mint and oregano. But basically, that's your and also we have what we the creamy navy bean soup. This is a MGT recipe. Uh, my wife prepares the soup, and then we take and we freeze dry it. And so, can you imagine sticking this in your bag, Sister Vicky, where when you get to where you needed to be, all you needed to do was just take some hot water and rehydrate it and give it back its life, and you get that nice, nice bean soup. Okay. Now the cons about it is that the process itself is pretty expensive. The equipment is expensive, and the process is uh, to go through that process, and it takes some time. It takes some time, and so that's one of the things that hinders people from getting into that world. But if you want it, and also the astronauts, that's how your astronauts eat also. They eat the freeze dried products, and you can freeze dry bananas, fruits, all kind of fruits, vegetables, meat, chicken, the whole beef, uh, and we've even done cheesecake. But so there's a lot of things that you can freeze dry, and then they still maintain that nutritional value. Okay, and if you have any questions on that, feel free to ask. And thank you.
Okay, awesome, brother Gerald. It was interesting you saying that water is called spoilage, and air, those two components. It's
Yes,
very
ma'am.
interesting that you mentioned that. So what kind of advice with any type of particular equipment? I think you said it's expensive. Any type of equipment that we can use if somebody's interested in taking that plunge to freeze dry?
Well, I found out that it's good to have some electrical know-how, a little knowledge in electronics. It's not required, but if you sometimes your machines might not do what you want them to do, and you need to go in and do some troubleshooting. Uh,
Right.
so it's but you can the equipment, it is you can and where you're talking about your hydration, dehydration, $50 to $300
Right.
with freeze drying. You're talking maybe 2,000 to 100,000
Wow.
for the equipment alone to
Mm.
do to process the food.
Wow.
And then the time, man, sometimes you can run a batch and it takes 50 hours sometimes. And this is for like 5 trays, you know. So it's and if you're gonna do it, you need a high value food per se to really get the if you're doing it commercially.
Right.
You need something that's of high value, like the garlic and the cayenne, something that has a medicinal value to it.
Right. Beautiful. And again, I was going to say the idea of having the best of foods to do it with, to avoid pesticides and avoid GMO foods, because we don't, that's not going to keep us alive. That's actually killing us. So we want to have the good quality food. Shopping at farmers markets, the local farmers, and growing your own food. But those are things you want to consider as you're doing freeze-dried food dehydration as well. Thank you very, very much, Brother Gerald, for the information. And remember, put your question. I see some beautiful questions in the chat. We're going to get to that shortly. So I'm going to bring on right now Sister Portia to present. She will be talking about canning. Sister Portia.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
It's your time. Yes, ma'am. Beautiful.
Okay, praise be to
Okay.
Allah.
Mhm.
First of all, I would like to thank Sister Rhonda for allowing me to come back on the show. These are some wonderful topics to really help people in a timely manner, such as now where, you know, we're going through a pandemic and there's things that we need to learn, such as survival and growing our own food so that everybody can be empowered to not depend on other people, but to depend on themselves. So thank you again, Sister Rhonda, for that. So I am definitely going to cover the topic of canning. And for some of us, just like myself, we may have some reservations on canning. We may have some fears because we might have heard any type of horror stories on it. But just to let you know, if I can, anybody can, okay? So I want to empower all of you and to motivate you and inspire you to know that you have the power to do this. No matter what, I'm going to hopefully help you and get you up and ready. And then, you know, as you move on in your canning experience and your canning journey, you'll get more and more confident. So some theories that we may have or reservations for canning could be for like malfunctioning of the canner causing harm, or food not being canned properly causing spoilage or some food poisoning. And those are all legitimate, you know, problems and fears that we may have. But some key tips that we need to understand and make sure that we're always utilizing as we are starting on our canning journey is, first of all, make sure that you're working with a clean and sterile and sanitized kitchen area. That's first and foremost. Think of it almost like an operation. When doctors are getting ready to perform an operation, everything has to be sterile. Everything has to be cleaned properly so that there's no type of contamination and there's no type of anything that can be spread. We have to take on that same mindset when we're canning. Make sure, very, very important, that you read over your instructions 1 to 2 times before you attempt to can, because there's always something that we may pick up on the first or second time that can help us become a little more confident, a little more prepared and comfortable with canning. And also, it's important to read your instructions because it will help you make sure you have all of the ingredients that you need in order to get the canning done. The really important key tip in this, if you don't remember anything else, use your manufacturer's guidelines and instructions. They can never go wrong. You can get them from USDA. You can get them from your actual canner itself. When you purchase your pressure canner or your water bath canner, they have the information in the box. Utilize it. A lot of us don't like reading instructions because it's such fine print and it's so much information, but it's there for a reason. Very important as well, only use recipes that have been tried and tested and have been proven to be safe and effective by the USDA. I know they have tons of canning recipes on Pinterest and Google and YouTube, but if you cannot find a recipe that has been approved by the USDA because it's scientifically approved, then I would suggest that I would suggest you don't use them at all. But, you know, some people may, once they get a little more comfortable, they consider themselves to be professional. But as far as how I handle it and what I follow, I would suggest anybody who's planning on canning to always use recipes that have been tried and true and tested and proven that they're safe to utilize. And last but not least, utilize your resources such as the USDA website, which I'll be pulling up in a minute so that you can have that as your resource anytime you want to can and anytime you want to get any type of background information. They have everything on there, as well as your canning book. So this book, if you can see it, is called the All New Ball Book of Canning and Preserving. This is an excellent, excellent book. It has so many wonderful recipes, but it also has the guidelines and instructions that have been approved by the USDA. And so this is an excellent resource to have, as well as referring to the USDA website. So at this time, I'm going to move on to my presentation. Let's see. Give me 1 second, please. Give me 1 second. Okay. Can y'all see the screen?
No, ma'am.
Okay, hold on 1 second. And get back to my Zoom so I can share it with you guys. Okay. I truly apologize. I'm trying to open up my file. See if this is it. Can y'all see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, praise be to Allah. So this is the website that I was referring to. This is the United States Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture. If you are interested in getting this website, if you don't already have it, I will highlight it right here and also type it in the chat. It's nchfp.uga.edu. This website is excellent for any type of referencing, any type of questions that you may have, anything that you may be unsure of. This website will answer all of your questions. So what you would do is you would go to the principles of canning. It's a link that you would click on once you actually get to the home website, and then you will come to the complete guide to home canning, guide 1, principles of home canning. So the reasons why we can foods, just like Sister Vicky stated as well, and the reason why we preserve foods, canning can be a safe and economical way to preserve quality food at home. Disregarding the value of your labor, canning homegrown food may save you half the cost of buying commercially canned food. Many vegetables begin losing some of their vitamins when harvested. Nearly half of the vitamins may be lost within a few days unless the fresh produce is cooled or preserved. Within 1 to 2 weeks, even refrigerated produce loses half or more of some of its vitamins. If vegetables are handled properly and canned promptly after harvest, they can be more nutritious than fresh produce sold in local stores. So i.e., if you can put a star next to this, grow your food if you are able to, even if you have to grow in pots, and or purchase from a farmer's market or a local farmer near your area. There are local Black farmers in just about every city, but we have to utilize them. We have to find them because they are really becoming less and less because people are not getting produce from them, and they're getting such a bad rep from the government and, you know, from just trying to be successful in doing what they do. But since they are a small business, it really takes a toll on them and their produce when we don't support them. So please support local farmers as much as you can. Now, one thing that I stated in the reservations why some people may be a little hesitant in canning is because of some of the stories we may have heard of, as far as maybe food spoilage, or something may have went wrong, or somebody might have gotten sick. But I'm letting you know, you got this. One thing you have to understand is the science behind it. It's always a science when it comes to canning. Okay, so as long as you follow the science. We can't just cook and, add a little here and there like we do when we're cooking in a regular kitchen. We have to follow the recipe verbatim so that we make sure that we are following the science that has been tested and proven. So one situation that we can refer to when it comes to food spoilage is the growth of a bacterium known as Clostridium botulinum in canned foods, which may cause botulism. Botulism is a deadly form of food poisoning. The processing times in these guides will ensure destruction of the largest expected number of heat-resistant microorganisms in home canned foods, and properly sterilized canned food will be free of spoilage if lids seal and jars are stored below 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to go to the next. Give me a second, please. Okay. All right. Okay. Does not want to cooperate, but it's okay. We can move on. Okay, so this is where I went on the website. All right. Here we are. So this is a diagram of the temperatures that are needed. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right, the temperatures for food preservation. So as you can see, at 250 degrees Fahrenheit, canning temperatures for low acid vegetables such as meat and poultry should be canned in a pressure canner. There's a difference between your pressure canner and a water bath canner. Water bath canners are kind of where you want to start if you are a beginner canner. You don't necessarily want to start using a pressure canner. Water bath canning is a little more simpler to do. So we'll get into that in a minute. So again, these are the temperatures that you want to have your pressure canner at when you're canning low acid vegetables such as, your beans, your green beans, your carrots, and as well as your meat and your poultry. And then as you get down, you see here's a danger zone. Temperatures between 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 140 degrees Fahrenheit allow rapid growth of bacteria, yeast, and molds. We don't ever want to have our pressure canner or water bath canner at a temperature that is not specifically instructed by our USDA instructions. And then as you get colder and colder, it says best for storage temperatures for frozen foods. Now, when we talk about food acidity, food acidity and processing methods. Now, whether food should be processed in a pressure canner or boiling water canner, also known as a water bath canner, to control botulinum bacteria depends on the acidity of the food. Acidity may be natural, as in most fruits, or added, as in pickled food, Low acid canned foods are not acidic enough to prevent the growth of these bacteria. Acid foods contain enough acid to block their growth or destroy them more rapidly when heated. The term pH, some of you may be familiar with it, is a measure of acidity. The lower its value, the more acid the food. The acidity level in foods can be increased by adding lemon juice, citric acid, or vinegar. Like I said, this all comes straight from the USDA website. Now, low acid foods have pH values higher than 4.6. They include red meats, seafood, poultry, milk, and all fresh vegetables except for most tomatoes. Most mixtures of low acid and acid foods also have pH values above 4.6, unless the recipes include enough lemon juice, citric acid, or vinegar to make them acid foods. Acid foods have a pH of 4.6 or lower. They include fruits, pickles, sauerkraut, jams, jellies, marmalades, and fruit butters. So as you can see here, referring to this diagram, you have your acid foods, which you see that the number is that 1 is the strongest acid, where you have right here, actually the lemon is at a pH of 3, so that's the most acidic. And so you would can all of these foods in your water bath canner. And then as you get further and further down, or the pH is lower acidity, high pH, then you have your vegetables, you have your meats, you have your poultry, and all of these have to be and must be used in a pressure canner, okay? Now, I'm going to show a video at this time of me actually canning some jalapeno peppers that I actually harvested from my backyard. And before I do that, there are some terms that you will hear me use that I want to go ahead and help you understand what they mean. So first of all, your headspace. Your headspace in actual canning is the space above the actual liquid in the jar, okay? And I will show you all this in the video, but you're gonna hear me say headspace. Let me see. So if you see this diagram, this is the liquid, level of liquid, okay? You have your little green beans, and then this space, this area from the lid to the level of the liquid is considered your headspace. Depending on what you are canning will determine how much of a headspace you will need. And the reason why these headspaces vary is because the food the area and the space inside the jar where the food is can expand. And as the air expands, it actually causes the temperature to increase. And because of that temperature increasing, it causes the expansion. And this is why you have variable head spaces based off of what you are actually canning. Another term that you will hear me discuss is basically the types of jars, which this is not really a term, but this just kind of shows you a diagram of all the different sizes of jars. This is considered to be a jelly jar. You will see most of those are kind of like a decorative engravement in the glass. These are a little bit on the smaller side, not the smallest jars, but this is what I will be using to can my jalapeno peppers. And then you have your pint-sized jars, you have your quart jars, you have your half-gallon, then you have your gallon. So depending on what you're actually canning will determine what size jar you will need to use. The bigger and more longer food items, you would probably want to use a quart size and higher for those. All right, so now I'm going to move on to my video. This is Portia from Grow Flow, and today we will be canning. We're going to be pickling some jalapeno peppers, so get ready.
Mr. Portia, we can't see the video.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
We can hear it though.
Okay, 1 second. Let me go back. My apologies. Let me go back and share the screen. All right.
There we go.
This is Portia from Grow Flow.
Can you hear
And
it okay?
today we will be canning. We're going to be pickling some jalapeno peppers. So get ready. Today, we're going to be discussing how to properly can and pickle jalapeno peppers. Now, most of us may be a little intimidated or a little afraid to get into the kitchen and use a pressure canner because of the horror stories that we've heard. But have no fear. Believe me, you have the power to do this, and I'm going to help you with it. So these are the tools and equipment that you'll be needing in order to properly and appropriately can your jalapeno peppers. First thing you're going to need is a jar lifter, a jar funnel, a bubble remover and headspace measuring tool, a lid lifter, a lid rack. You need a kitchen timer, a measuring cup, as well as measuring spoon, and stainless steel ladle. So what we have done also to prepare ourselves and our jars in order to can our pickled jalapeno peppers is we have already filled this water bath canner with a little bit over half of warm water, and we have submerged our jars into the water just enough so it's a little over an inch over, the water is an inch over the jars. And then we brought this to a rolling boil and brought it back down. Once it got to a rolling boil, we brought it down to a simmering boil and allowed the jars to be boiling and getting sterilized for 10 minutes. And one method that you can use to sterilize your bands and your lids is to actually pour some of the boiling water from the water bath canner and put your bands and lids in a bowl, as I've done, and let them sit for 10 minutes. So we are putting on some rubber gloves as we are waiting for our brine to start boiling. We're putting on rubber gloves in order to protect our hands because they are jalapeno peppers, and I do have a few banana peppers. We don't want to get them on our hands. Even if we wash our hands, they can still, that heat that comes from the pepper can stay on our fingers, and if we rub our eyes or anything, it can cause them to burn. So to protect that from taking place, we're going to wear our rubber gloves. Now these peppers are actually fresh organic peppers straight from our garden out of the backyard, okay? These are straight from the backyard, so this is going to be delicious. So what we're going to do at this time is we're going to start slicing the jalapeno peppers into 1/4 inch rings, and then once we slice them, we're going to place them in our glass bowl. Okay? Smell the heat from these peppers, and most of the heat is actually in the seed of the pepper. That's where all the heat lies, right in the seed. Let me put this in here. So if you are cooking with any type of jalapeno peppers at any time and you don't want them to be as hot, just remove your seeds. And it'll take some of the bite from them, but they will still have some heat. And like I said, we are cutting them in 1/4 inch rings. So just to let you know, these peppers have been properly cleaned before we handle them at any time. So they were kind of soaked in lightly vinegar type water in order to get any dirt or residue off of them. So they are nicely cleaned at this moment, and what we are using from our backyard garden is actually banana peppers as well as jalapeno peppers to pickle today. So what I have done is I have cut them up into 1/4 inch rings. And what we're going to do at this time is we're going to take these and put them into our brine and bring our brine back up to a boil. We allowed our brine to come to a boil, and then after it started to boil, we brought it down to a simmer, and we're going to put our jalapeno and banana pepper rings into the brine carefully, very carefully. And after we do that, we're going to bring the brine back up to a boil, and once it comes back up to a boil, immediately we're going to turn the heat off. And the reason why it's important for you to immediately turn the heat off is because you do not want your peppers to overcook. All right, we're going to bring this back to a boil. Make sure that the peppers get all that flavor in that brine. And while we're waiting for that to bring back up to a boil, I wanted to mention that after I allowed my bands and my lids to sit in the bowl of hot boiling water for 10 minutes, I did pour the water off. And the reason why I did that is because you do not want your bands or your lids to rust. They can potentially start to rust if you allow them to sit in water too long. So I poured my water off of them, and now they're just sitting sterilized. What we're going to do is, now that our jars have been properly sterilized, we are going to place a clean kitchen towel on the counter, which we have done, and we are going to take our jars out of the water bath canner, ensuring that no liquid is left in the jar by turning it completely upright, and then placing these on our kitchen towel. And we are using this jar lifter to do this. Okay, so now we are ready to jar up our jalapeno and banana peppers. They have been boiled in the brine. We took them off we turned the heat off completely after they started boiling because we do not want them to overcook. So we placed our funnel in our first jar, and we want to make sure that the jars are still hot because we do not want any type of shock to take place where they can break. So we're going to fill our jars up all the way up until there is a 1/2 inch headspace, and I will explain what that is in 1 minute. Okay, so now we are filling our jalapeno peppers into the jars, and we're going to leave a 1/2 inch headspace. So what we need to do in order to check that is take our funnel out, and we're going to use our headspace measuring tool, and this represents a 1/2 inch. If you can see the 1/2 inch mark right there, and we're going to check and see if we have a 1/2 inch. And we need just a little bit more. Add just a little bit more. All right, so we're going to continue jarring our peppers and brine into our jars. Leaving a 1/2 inch headspace. And we're going to check it with our headspace measuring tool. Remember, this is a 1/2 inch right here. And what we have to do is use the bubble remover, which is on the other side, and we're going to use the bubble remover to remove any bubbles that we have in this jar, if necessary, by sliding the bubble remover between the jar and the food to release trapped air and ensure proper headspace during processing. We're going to repeat this around the jar 2 or 3 times, and then we're going to check the headspace again as we do that. So again, we're using the other end of this headspace measuring tool, and we're going to use this as our bubble remover. We're going to go around the jar 2 or 3 times to ensure no trap bubbles. And then we're going to check the headspace again, because as you are releasing bubbles, it can cause the headspace to change. I'm going to do the same thing for this jar. these are some strong jalapeno peppers. And you will notice that anything that you use from your garden is going to have a little bit more potency just because it's so fresh. What that just means is going to have even more nutrients and nutritional value. And you can use these jalapenos for all sorts of different garnishes. You can use them to garnish maybe a chili that you've made. You can use them to garnish possibly if you make a pizza. And we have a 1/2 inch headspace, and we're going to do the last jar. So you can really utilize these peppers for all different types of dishes that you prepare. So now it's time, now that we have filled all 4 of our jars with our jalapeno and banana peppers, with our brine, it's time for us to clean our rims of the jar. This is going to ensure that no bacteria in there is sterilized as much as possible. No food residue has been left on the rims of the jars, okay? So what we're going to do is clean it, and what I did is I dipped my paper towel in a little white vinegar. You don't have to, you can just do some warm water, but I use a little bit of white vinegar to clean the rims and the ridges of my jars. And this is also going to help to your seal that you want in order for your jars to can and seal properly. You want the lid to seal and have that tight seal on it, and by ensuring that, you want to clean your rims and your lids, your rims and your threads of your jar so that no food residue is left. So now we have our lids that we are placing on our jars, and we're going to make sure that this sealing component that we have on the inner part of our jar, of our lids, we want to put that in contact with the edges and the rims of the jars, okay? And then once we've placed our lids on our jars, we're going to now place our bands on our jars, okay? And we're going to tighten them only fingertip tight. We do not want them too tight, or that can interfere with the sealing process. Okay? Fingertip tight. And now we are ready to place them in our water bath canners for processing. We will be processing these pickled jalapeno peppers for 5 minutes. All right, so now that we have placed our lids and our bands on our jars, we are now ready to place them in our water bath canners so they may process for 5 minutes in rolling, boiling water. And we want to make sure that the water is at least 1 to 2 inches above the rim of the jar. So we're going to use our jar lifter to pick up our jars and place them in our water bath canner. And we have already elevated our rack so that it is in place. And then we will lower this rack once all the jars have been placed in the water bath canner properly. Last but not least, and you can situate them and arrange them so that they are evenly distributed on the rack. All right, and now that we have them in our water bath canner, we can now lower our rack so that it's submerged in water. Remember, you want the water to be 1 to 2 inches above the rim of the jar to cover the jars. And then what we're going to do is we're going to place our lid on the canner, and bring it to a full rolling So now we are going to set our timer for 5 minutes so that we can have our jars processing in a full rolling boil. We're going to set our timer. It's always good to have a digital timer. You can get this at Walmart for a very affordable price. And we are now ready. So now what we're doing, to give you a recap, we have allowed our water bath canner to sit and cool for 5 minutes after it has processed our jars for 5 minutes. And so after it is set and cooled, we are now ready to remove the jars using our jar lifter and carefully removing them out of the water and placing them on a clean, dry towel. It is very important to not place your hot jars on a cool countertop. For temperature differences, we do not want that to take place because that can cause shattering and breakage. So if you didn't hear that pop, that is what you want to hear. You hear that? That is what you want to hear as a canner. You want to hear that pop. That lets you know, and that's an indication that you have a proper seal that is taking place and you have done the proper procedure in order to can your items. Now that we've taken place doing that, we are going to leave our jars, leave them alone for 12 to 24 hours. And I know it's going to be so hard for you not to bother them, but it's important that you do not touch them at this time because that can interfere with the sealing process. And within that time, you should be able to either hear a pop or you should see that your lid has properly sealed. So after that takes place, once you have let them undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours, then you can remove the bands and to try and lift your lids off with your fingertips. And if the lid cannot be lifted off, the lid has a good seal. So I just want to thank you so much for taking this time out with me to learn how to can pickled jalapeno. I told you that we had you, right? So now get into those kitchens, get started preserving those foods, and get to canning. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the video. Praise be to Allah. So at this time, I do want to show you my finished product. These are my jalapeno peppers that have been pickled. And what I did after I let them sit for 12 to 24 hours, how you check to see if they have been properly sealed is you take the band off. That's something that's very important. You always take your band off after you have canned your food items and you're ready to store them. You don't want to leave the band on because the band can rust over time. And then what you do is you just take your fingertip and you try to lift the lid up. If the lid does not lift, that means it has a proper seal.
Beautiful.
So this is the final product. What you would do after you check the seal is you would wash your lid and your jars down before you put them in storage, and they should be in a dark, cool, dry place. And there you have it. So I hope and pray that I have inspired someone to attempt to want to can, and you have the confidence to feel like you can get it done. Like I said, the website is excellent. The ball canning book is excellent. You have so many resources out there, so just try to use them as much as you can. And again, thank you, Sister Rhonda, for allowing me this time. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam. Thank you so very much. That was very wholesome and visual. I'm a visual learner. I do what I can, but still, those people that are never have not experienced the process of canning, this is very, very practical and clear on how to go about doing that. Thank you so very much, Sister Portia, for that presentation. Okay, now it's time to move to the next segment of our show, which is commercial break. We'll take a pause for commercial break. Don't forget to send your questions in, shout out who you're from, and we're going to address all your questions as we come back. Sister Kadir will be speaking with you after the commercial break. Now, this is for Black-owned businesses. We celebrate Black-owned businesses. We focus support each other and circle our dollars back and out to our community. So look out for anything that you of interest in this presentation. Thank you, and I'll see you back after the Q&A.
Good evening, everybody. I am here to bring us into the Q&A session of our program. And so what we're going to do is you can continue asking your questions in the chat if you have any questions to the panelists. And I'll start with the questions that have been already asked. And if you are coming in via phone, because we have some guests who are just dialing in, you can press *9 to raise your hand. Again, that's *9, and that is the way that you can get your question answered. And we also have Facebook listeners. So if you have a question, send your question into the comment section on Facebook, on our Facebook Live. So starting off, we're going to start off with Sister Vicky. This question is directed to you. Or actually, Sister Vicky and Brother Gerald. Someone had asked the question, what is the difference, Sister Yvette asked, what is the difference between freeze drying and food dehydration? Maybe you can expand further on that.
Brother Gerald, do you want to take that? Because I don't know the process of freeze dry, but you know the process of dehydration and freeze dry. So would you like to take that?
Well, I'll take the freeze drying part. You can take the but you can go ahead and explain the freeze drying, the differences. I know.
Okay.
With the freeze drying is that you're going to take your product and you're going to freeze it. You're going to freeze it, and then you're going to add pressure and heat at the right ratio and cause that water in your product to sublimate, meaning that it goes from a solid ice to a gas, a vapor, and then you're going to remove it out of your product. That's freeze drying. And I say again that and if it's packaged properly, it can last you for 25 years, and it maintains 98% of its nutritional value.
Okay, and go ahead. I'm sorry.
You can do the dehydration.
Okay. Dehydration is where all of the water is removed from the food through heat. And what it does, it leaves the nutritional value there. It just removes the water. So that's basically what dehydration is just you just removing the moisture from whatever food it is that you're dehydrating. And you dehydrate at different temperatures, just depending on what the fruit or vegetable is.
And I wanted to say, to reconstitute it, I know with freeze drying, I don't know about the dehydration, but you just simply add water back to it, and it comes right back to life.
Yeah, it's the same thing with dehydration. And with dehydration, you can even store dehydrated foods in mason.
Looks like there might be a little bit of a technical difficulty from Sister Vicky.
In jars. But I chose the vacuum. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I was just saying that you can actually store dehydrated foods in mason jars as well, but I choose to use the vacuum seal bags.
Okay, thank you both. I think that gave a clearer understanding of the differences between the two. So this question is directed, another one to Brother Gerald. Someone had asked, and this is from our Facebook watchers, Laura. She had asked, what are the natural preservations in freeze-dried foods? I guess essentially you're asking if there is some type of preservation that you have to put in your freeze-dried foods, and if so, what are the natural ones?
I'm not getting your question. Preparation or what's the
preservatives? Excuse me, preservatives.
Oh, nothing Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Straight, no chaser, no nothing, but straight product. That's the only thing you're putting in that into the freeze dryer. Now you can, if you wanted to season it, you can put preferably food that is already cooked if you're going to use food. But you can season it however you. It's just like what you want to eat. If you can prepare a meal and then freeze dry it and keep it and preserve it, and then take it out and rehydrate it, and you have it. You can freeze dry it just about anything. Just about anything.
Okay, thank you for that. And just a reminder, you can continue sending your questions in the chat and they'll be asked to the panelists or on Facebook in the comment section. So this one is directed to Sister Portia. What types, and this is from Sheena, what types of fresh fruit can you preserve? Like basically what do you prefer as, excuse me, I'm gonna rephrase this question. What type of fresh fruit can you can? Like, is there a specific preference on what you should and shouldn't can? And also, is the process similar to the pickling process that you showed us with your jalapeno?
Thank you. So you can any type of fruit that you like. Whatever your favorite fruits are, you can can them. Basically, any type of fruit that you see that's canned on the grocery store shelf, you can can at home. So for things like I've canned cherries, you can can apples, peaches, pears, all sorts of things. What I try to do is can the fruits that are in season. So during the summer, I did my peaches. I did apples are in season at the end of summer and beginning of fall. You can do pears now. You can even do things like watermelon rind during the summer. You can pretty much can anything and not waste any food. So it not only saves you money, but it helps you to prepare yourself for the winter when you don't have those fruits available readily. But then it also allows you to have the nutritional value that you need in those fruits. So any fruit that you desire, any fruit that you love, you can can. What was the next question?
The next part of the question was like, could you also can this using the same canning process that you did with jalapenos?
Right. So for the pickling, you would not use a vinegar base for canning your fruits. You would use sugar in your liquid in order to help preserve it. But because the fruits are naturally acidic, they don't need that vinegar base. You usually, what you do is when you as you prepare and cut the fruits, you will sit them in a citric acid or lemon solution, and that's going to help with preserving and keeping it nice and fresh and not letting it turn brown. But also because of the natural acidity of the fruit, this is going to help so that you don't have to use a type of vinegar and you don't have to put them in the pressure canner. You will be canning those fruits in the water bath canner.
Okay, thank you for answering that question. Now, the next question is, again, to both to Brother Gerald and Sister Vicky. I guess you have to decide who's going to answer first, too, for this one. Someone had asked, like, how's the taste of dehydration versus freeze-dried food? And the person who asked this was Vivian, and they also asked, how is your electrical bill? Which is, I guess, a very important question to find out while you're preparing to do this. So who would like to answer that question first?
I will. My electric bill is readily the same. I mean, it may be a few dollars higher because I did get a dehydrator that's economically efficient or whatever. So that one, my electric bill is fine. And as far as the taste of the food, I do the bean soup as well. I puree it and I actually dehydrate it on a silicone sheet. And all I do is add water to it and it still tastes the same. So I haven't had anything that was freeze dried other than my coffee, and it's excellent. Brother Gerald.
Yes, with the taste, when you're freeze drying, it tastes really, it tastes just as good as when you put it into the freeze dryer.
Mm-hmm.
Not only does it maintain that taste, it also maintains the cellular structure. It's gonna a blueberry is gonna look like a blueberry. A strawberry is gonna look like a strawberry when you rehydrate it. Um, and that electric bill, whew, wow. Uh, it is a definite. You definitely know when you've been doing some freeze drying. I had my students to run the numbers for me, the calculations on how much that process costs, and I think we get about an extra $40 a month. Was I think if $40 extra a month for that process. Yes,
Wow.
ma'am.
Wow, thank you. So that's a really important question to keep in mind as we're talking about preparing for that, because that's good to know. So, Brother Gerald, this next question also goes to you. So someone had asked, how's the 25 years determined? I wasn't exactly sure what they meant in that context, but apparently you mentioned 25 years. Could you expound more on that?
That is a good question, and I had the same question myself. Yeah, but that's what the literature says. And I don't know exactly how they determine that, but it comes from the quote scientists, and even that claim of 98% maintaining your nutritional value. Uh, uh, well, I guess you would have to live 25 years and check it out afterwards, you know. But I don't know. I'm just gonna. That's the literature that the scientists agree on that.
And then I forgot to mention who had asked this question. This was Margie. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Margie or Margie. So this question I actually have for Sister Vicky personally. When you're talking about dehydrating beans, like navy beans or lentils, I'm thinking of like specifically when you go, I personally love bundi. It's like an Indian lentil snack.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm like, what's like the steps of like recreating those type of like freeze-dried little, oh, excuse me, not freeze-dried, dehydrated type of snacks? Like, I'm imagining I probably have to cook it first or something.
Yes, you do. I mean, you would process it. You would actually cook the beans, and you would actually, I puree them, but I do make a granola bar that I actually put together, and then I let it sit for a couple of days, and then I actually I don't have to dehydrate it, but I actually put it in the vacuum seal bags. I want to show you something real quick. I did water. I put ice cubes in the bag, and then I double bagged it. I put it in a vacuum seal bag. And this is purified water. So you can actually do water as well. And I know that was a concern for me because I said, I have all of this dehydrated food, but some of the things that I need water for, like my bean soup, to rehydrate my bean soup, some vegetables that I want to rehydrate. And then I start thinking about, okay, how can I vacuum seal water? And so I just froze the ice cubes, put them in the bag, and put them under vacuum seal, and I double bagged it. So that's how I kind of work around it.
That is incredible.
I'm telling you, that's wow.
Great.
Wow. We're all blown away. And I imagine the audience is too, just hearing that. Thank you for
You're
that
welcome.
answer. Okay, so this question goes to Sister Portia. If you do not hear and this comes from Brandy, if you do not hear the pop on the jar and the sealing has failed, should you start the process over? Okay. And if so, like, do you start like from the very, very beginning, like you have to just toss everything, or is there like, is there a way to like repair that?
Okay, is my sound okay?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay, just want to make sure I don't have an echo. So what you need to do, let's say that this lid came off as you tried to pull it up and it just came off easily. What you're going to do is you're going to put your rim back on, your band, and then you put it right into the refrigerator, and you would want to eat this up immediately, whatever you have canned, whether it's your fruit, your vegetables, or your peppers. I have seen where people do reprocess the jars again. I don't personally suggest that. I would suggest putting them immediately in the refrigerator and then eating them up immediately.
Okay, that makes sense. That's for like health reasons, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this question actually is to any of the panelists. The question is, what are some of the in considering especially the time that we're in right now, considering COVID-19, the economy, what are some of the most valued foods we should consider canning right now? Dehydrating or freezing or canning, and all of them. And of course, this person, her name is Consuela. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Consuela. She asked, like, of course, considering the navy bean, that's a given. But also, for some people, that might not be a given. So maybe if someone can expound on why the navy bean would also be important on that list.
I can answer that.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm trying to make sure I don't have an echo. Do I have an echo?
No, ma'am.
Okay, good. So, of course, you can can your navy beans, like the sister said. Anything that you get, if any of you are familiar with the Staple Goods Project, your lentils, your red lentils, your brown lentils. I mean, you can even, I've seen sisters can bread. So things that are staple for you, that are going to hold you over in a time of survival. You don't need the luxury items per se. You just need the things that your family are going to need in a time of need, and in a time of possibly if there is a disaster or something where you cannot leave the house. Something that's going to give you the nutritional value that your body needs on a daily basis. One thing I forgot to mention that I meant to mention was there is an actual family chart at the one of the pages of that USDA website, and it actually will walk you through according to a family of 4. Now you can kind of adjust it based off of what size family you have, but it breaks down for you by week, by year, how much food, based off of the fruits and vegetables that you decide to can, how much food you will need for your family of 4 within a year. So this is something I strongly suggest all of you to try to maybe download and speak with, your significant others at home and your children, and show them that, look, this is possibly a reality that we need to put into place and understand in our minds, that we may not be able to eat 2 or 3 times a day. Mm-hmm. We may not be able to have, the lasagnas or whatever we're used to eating. We can only eat these staple foods, maybe a jar of navy beans per person, a jar of fruit per person, and then go with your water. That may be all you can eat. So you want to have the staple foods that are really going to give you the fats that you need, the carbs that you need for the daily value of nutrients.
Now, Sister Portia, I'm just going to interject before I go to any of the other panelists to answer this question. Again, the question is, what are the foods that we should prioritize when we're considering preserving our food? But could someone also expound on why specifically the navy bean should be a given when we're considering those list of items to preserve?
Yes, ma'am. So the navy bean is one of the most nutritious foods that you can eat. It's a whole food by itself. It's a bean soup is a meal by itself. Okay, so if you didn't have anything else, if you had some bean soup, some whole wheat bread, and some milk, that you are good. But the bean itself has so many nutritional value to it. It protects you from radiation. It has all the nutrients literally all the nutrients that you need, that you will be kind of getting from other fruits and vegetables. The navy bean has it. And just to give you a context on that, if you ever grew navy beans, or when a farmer grows a navy bean, you don't want to grow anything else around that navy bean. The reason why is because it sucks up all of the nutrients out of the ground, so much so that you cannot plant in that same area for 3 whole years without replenishing the soil and replenishing the soil. So it takes 3 whole years to replenish that soil after you've grown navy beans. So that just lets you know how much nutrients is in that one bean.
Wow. And would anyone else like to expound on also the list of foods in addition to Sister Portia broke it down. Does anyone else want to add to that?
I'd like to add to what Sister Portia said. The navy bean is the only bean that they have not been able to do a GMO on. So it's in its original state as it was back in the day of Moses when they call it pulse. So they have not been able to do anything with that bean. They can't mutate it into something else. So it's in its original form.
And it looks like Brother Gerald had something to add to that.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Can you see that?
Yes.
Navy bean soup. Navy bean soup, right? Uh-oh, I dropped it. But it's still good. I mean, I didn't break it or anything, right? And this right here is I would say 3 servings of navy bean soup, right here.
Wow. Okay. Well, that was powerful. Anyone else have anything else they want to add before I move on to the next question? Okay. So the next question is again for Sister Portia. Yes, and this is from Charlotte on Facebook. She asked, can fruits be canned without adding additional sugar? Can fruits be, that was a question. Can fruits be canned without adding additional sugar?
No, ma'am. Like I stated before, per the USDA agricultural department, food and agricultural department, you have to make sure that you follow the guidelines and the recipe exactly as it states. Just to give you a scenario, so myself and another sister, we kind of teamed up ever since we've been canning together, kind of canning a certain day of the week. And she was planning on making, I think it was either a jam or a jelly or even an apple butter, and she was noticing how much sugar they were calling for, and she was like, I don't want to put that much sugar in it. But you know, in any other scenario, you could possibly tweak it, but not when you are canning. You have to follow it. And there's a reason why. There's a reason why they tell you to put this much salt. There's a reason why they tell you to add this much sugar, because the science behind it has been tested and proven that it'll preserve that particular food product appropriately and properly for you.
All right, thank you, Sister Portia. And since a couple of people had asked, now this is also, Charlotte asked this question about where she could get the freeze-dried bean soup. And we've also gotten a couple questions in the chat about it. I just put it into the chat. You can contact Brother Gerald and call him, and he will be able to, get your order together. And for anyone who's been trying to unmute themselves, we don't have the option of unmuting, but you can ask your question in the chat, and then I will ask it for you for the panelists for the sake of time and making sure we're, because we have a lot we're trying to put into a segment. So it's just quicker to have it typed in the chat and then I'd ask it. And also, if you're only using your phone, you can't type in the chat, but if you press *9, you can raise your hand and ask your question that way if you're only calling in through the phone. So we have a couple more questions left. And this one is for Sister Vicky, and this is from fellow panelist Sister Portia.
Yes, ma'am.
And she asked, what is the process of dehydrating food in a mason jar? Or excuse me, from dehydrating food in a mason jar.
Well, you dehydrate the food first, and then you actually put it in the mason jar and you tighten the lid. From all of the literature that I've read is that you can do bread. The shelf life for the bread in the mason jar is like 5 months. that's without it growing mold or anything, because the air that's in the jar is still there, but it's not being circulated. So from all of the literature that I've read, that you can dehydrate and you can store it in mason jars in a nice cool place.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we have 2 questions left. And this one is for Sister Portia from Aaliyah. If you are canning and you go by the recipe, but in the end you have enough of the recipe to can 2 more jars, can you still can them in the canner with the other jars?
Okay, let me just make sure I'm understanding the question. It says, in the end, you have enough of the recipe to can 2 more jars. Can you still can them in a canner with the other jars, like instead of 4 jars, 6 jars? Absolutely. So depending on the size canner that you have, and depending on the jars that you're working with, that will ultimately determine whether you can add more jars or not. Now, like I said before, if you go to the UGA, the USDA website, it actually has a chart to let you know based off of what size jar you're using, whether it's a quart size, a pint size. It will tell you how many jars, the minimum and the maximum that you can place in your canner. Like I said, they're different sizes. So you can get a 12 quart canner, you can get a 16 quart, you can get a 21 quart. And to be honest, even when you have something like a 21 quart, which is a very large size pressure canner, you can actually stack your jars. So if you have your first layer like you would normally do, you can actually stack them on top to get double the amount. So it all depends on the size jar that you're using and the recipe that you are following, as well as the size canner that you're using.
Wow. I'm learning so much. I mean, I'm very, very, very basic canner. And I'm learning so much myself. So this is like such valuable information just all around. So with our final question, this is going to more or less come full circle to our From Seed to Harvest, because this is not specifically on this topic, but it is in the general theme of From Seed to Harvest. And so I thought this might be important enough, especially considering when we're considering food preservation, we also have to be sure that we're getting food that is good for our bodies to preserve to begin with. So with this question, Brandy had asked to any of the panelists, are there any good websites, or I'm adding this, resources in general, where you can get organic non-GMO seeds?
I would
Okay, go ahead, Brother
Sister,
Gerald.
I actually have a list. I can send it to you, and so anyone who is interested in receiving that list, if they're on your mailing list, then I can email that to you so they can have it. But I mean, there's so many. They even have Black-owned seed companies that you can utilize. But this one is not particular a Black-owned seed company, but one that you can actually get from Walmart. It's called, I think it's Root to Grow. It's an all-natural, non-GMO, organic seed company, and it's excellent. I've utilized it growing my cherry tomatoes and things like that. But like I said, I can send you a list of it after the show.
Yes, that's actually a wonderful idea. So if and I'm going to let Brother Gerald and Sister Vicky also expound on this, but yes, send us the list, and then if you are on our mailing list, we will send that out to you so that you can have the resource as well. And if you are not on our mailing list, hold on for about a couple minutes, and at the end of our show, we'll have the information so that you can join our mailing list, so you can get that information with everybody else. So Sister Vicky, Brother Gerald, any other closing answers to this question?
I order my heirloom seeds from texasseed.com, and they basically have seeds that grow here in this area where I am, because I've gotten seeds like from when I was at Savior's Day, and they just really, really didn't take off. And I was trying to figure out what was going on, and I talked to Dr. Ridgely, and he said that it's probably because those seeds are not native to my area, or I needed to add something in my soil. So he suggested that I look up local heirloom seed locations that's here within my state. Well, then I'd had better success. So I've been getting mine from texasseeds.com.
Okay, thank you. And Brother Gerald?
I don't have anything to add to that, but like Sister said, you want to get your seeds from local if you can. They're already climatized. A cooperative would be a good place to get them. And a lot when you deal with your GMOs, a lot of times the people that are pushing the GMOs, they've invested a lot of time and money in those crops, and they want to get a return on it. So they haven't really too much tapped into the tomatoes and the every day-to-day crop. But those big commercial crops, they got them all locked up. Corn, soybean, and there is a difference between, if we had time, we could kind of go into that hybrid and the GMOs. But usually you're kind of pretty safe, getting your seeds. It's when you get into that big commercial world where you run into the big problem with the GMOs.
Wow. Okay. Thank you all so much for that. And if you can, if you could send that to us, and then we will send those resources out to all of our subscribers so that you can all have that information readily available. So what I'm going to do is now we're going to close the Q&A session, and I'm going to turn this back over to Sister Rhonda, who is going to close us out. And so just give us a moment as we transition to her, and you can get all of that information about how to join our mailing list and etc. from then. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, awesome, wonderful. Wealth of information. I want to add to also Vivian Stewart in the chat says also go to the Facebook page Black Farmers Nationwide. Someone on there will know a wealth of knowledge. I learned about this event on the Facebook page. Thank you so much, Sister Vivian Stewart, for adding that information as well. So I'm going to give the announcements and then close us out. Just a few announcements. Next month, we have a show for November for Holistic Health, from your garden to your table. And it will be Sunday, November 29th, at the same time, 5 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And one of our guests is will be on the show. She's also on one of the guests, or one of the people in our is on right now. Her name's Sister Peggy Muhammad. She has a wealth of things to share with us, and we have other guests as well on that. So look out for that. It's going to be very interesting. December 27th is we're doing closing the year with farming and animal husbandry on how to use a quarter of acre or half acre or less to do your own homestead. Wow, that's a good way to end the year. And then I would like you to help me out here and share with your friends and family. We all need to know this. It's not just one group of or organization. It belongs to the whole Black community. This is a push to help us all and be self-sufficient as we go through these different times of changing and food is coming more scarce. We want to make sure we survive and eat well. So share. The ones you love them, share with them. Remember to subscribe, and Kadir will put it in the chat. Subscribe to texting and mailing lists. Text the word seedling, phone number 31996. Kadir put that in the chat. And join our mailing list email from seed number 2 harvest20@gmail.com. Join us so you can get all the information as soon as it comes out, and you know when our shows are and other things that may be occurring as well. And you can repost your businesses anytime, every month, if you like, and the progress of your garden next month as well. We're going to show the progress of, we're going to celebrate gardening at the end of the show. You can post that on from seed to harvest20@gmail.com. You can start doing it now for next month. We want to always celebrate Black-owned business and keep the money circulating in our community. Video or all the presentations that we have, you can find on YouTube. Put in from seed to harvest, and the workshop number. You can view all the videos or presentations we've done from seed to harvest, whichever one you're interested in. Is all for you to view. Send your donations to help with these meetings and for helping with more reaches of this program and the growing to Cash App from seed to harvest. If you would like to send other means of sending donations, you can email from seedtoharvest20@gmail.com and tell us how you want to send your donations. So, with that said, I would like to thank our guests, wonderful guests, amazing guests, powerhouse guests in the areas of their sharing today. Sister Vicky, thank you so much for being on the show. Very much. And Brother Gerald, I thank you as well. And Sister Portia, thank you so much for bringing us a wealth of information, something we always refer to and utilize. I would also thank my husband, Tariq Muhammad, for his support, my tech team, which would be Sister Kadira, which is my daughter, and my other sister, Amira, for their help. And my friends and family, a shout out to Charlotte, North Carolina, LOC Vivian Stewart, Youngstown, Ohio, Abingdon, I hope I said Maryland, St. Louis, Missouri, New Orleans, St. Antonio, Texas, and Queens, New York. A big shout out to all of you for participating and being part in supporting this show. Now, before we close out, when we close out, we're going to see, the show's going to be closed with viewing gardens celebrating gardens that individuals sent in. If we celebrate the new to the intermediate to advanced gardens, anyone, because this idea is getting our people involved and feeling comfortable and loving what they do. So with that said, again, my name is Rhonda Muhammad. It was my pleasure being your host here. I'd like to thank my guests and thank you for tuning into the show. And if it's God's will, we'll see each other on the next show and presentation. We're going to close with the garden and have a wonderful evening.